All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope all of you guys have had a great week so far. Round 2 coverage of the NBA playoffs here at Hoops Tonight is brought to you by Chase Freedom Unlimited. How do you cash back? All right, another series preview today. Our second to last one, Celtics versus the Sixers. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to The Volume's YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements. And if for whatever reason you guys missed one of these videos and you can't get back over to YouTube to finish, don't forget you can find them wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. All right, let's talk some basketball. So the Celtics are a minus 310 favorite right now. That's pretty substantial. The Celtics won the season series 3-1, and just about everybody played in all of the games, with the exception of the last one where Jaylen Brown sat out and Philly did win. Although Embiid did need to score 52 points to barely come back and steal that game, and they still required a couple of PJ Tucker corner threes to get the job done. Boston actually held a 5-point lead about halfway through the fourth quarter in that one. As of right now, Joel Embiid is listed as doubtful for game 1. The reporting is still super vague about his status, so I really don't know what to expect. I am going to do this series preview as though he's available for every game. That said, I am a little concerned that even if he does play, because he relies so much on jump shooting at the free throw line to be truly great against great defenses. Obviously, he's going to get his 20 points just by drawing fouls and powering his way to the basket, but really being that efficient 30-point scorer that he is requires him to be effective at the foul line. It also plays a big role in the way guys guard him. And so because of that, I'm worried about his rhythm and his conditioning. Rhythm, just the natural way that getting away from the game of basketball to rest your knee can affect your timing on a lot of stuff, especially when you're trying to operate at game speed. And then it affects your conditioning, which means that you get up and down a few times against a really good team, especially a team that's going to engage him defensively the way that this Boston team will, and how that can affect his legs and cause some problems for him with jump shooting. So again, we're going to cover it as though he's available, somewhat limited, but available. That said, I do have some concerns on that front. All right, let's hit some major matchups. So how will Boston guard Joel Embiid in the post? And how effective will Joel Embiid be down there, both in post-up situations and in isolations? I went back and watched a ton of film today of the way that Boston guarded Philly, particularly on Embiid isos and post-ups. And really, they do a nice job of mixing up coverages. We talked a lot about this yesterday when I was talking about how the Knicks, I expect to guard Jimmy Butler. And I talked about, different types of double teams, different timing for double teams, why you should occasionally not double team, and just the way that I would try to keep a superstar off balance. And Boston just does a really good job of this. There doesn't appear to be much of a rhyme or reason to the way they do things. It doesn't even matter what time of the game it is. You guys might remember in the most recent game when Joel Embiid had 52 and PJ Tucker hit the game winners, they left him in single coverage most of the game, but then at the end of the game, they started hard doubling him on every possession down the stretch. But then we go back to the previous game, the game where Jayson Tatum hit the game winner at the buzzer, and in that game, down the stretch, they randomly left him in single coverage on a key possession against Jaylen Brown on the left block. They just didn't double, and Joel Embiid faked like he was going to shoot a fadeaway jumper over his right shoulder. Jaylen Brown left his feet, landed on top of him. He picked up a foul. He went to the line. So I'd like to say that they probably will have a real game plan going into this playoff series, but the reality is during the regular season, I can't tell you exactly what I think they're going to do because they did something different in every game. Sometimes it's single coverage. Randomly, they'll just leave him on an island. Then other times it's like a hard double on the catch before he even has a chance to do anything. Other times they're just digging down from his face side on that one pass away guy, right? Other times they're doubling on his face side. Sometimes they're doubling from behind him. A lot of times when he turns his back to drive to the basket, they'll double him. There was a play in the most recent game where he was posting and Jaylen Brown just snuck out of the right corner and just took it away from him and went the other way. It's all very mixed up, all very random. And I think that actually helps because I've noticed that specifically with hard doubles in this matchup, Joel Embiid's been prone to turnovers. And I think a big part of that is they're not coming with the double team consistently enough for him to expect it. And then when they do, they're catching him off guard. As we look at the numbers, Embiid was fantastic at home He had 63 points on 43 post-ups and ISOs, including passes in Philly. That's 1.47 points per possession, which is excellent. But in Boston, much more down to earth. 19 points on 19 post-ups and ISOs, including passes, for just 1 point per possession. So that's going to be a big swing factor in this series, just how effective Embiid is, in large part because the pick and roll offense for Philly was not very consistently good in this matchup. They do a lot of switching. Boston does. They do a really good job of chasing over the top of screens with their guards. They bring their big in Al Horford or Robert Williams pretty high out of his drop coverage to contest pull-up jump shots. So they're going to need a lot out of Tyrese Maxey and James Harden in isolation. James Harden played pretty well against Boston during the regular season. He averaged 26, 6, and 9 on 48% from the field, 42% from 3, and 97% from the line, which is amazing, with 9 assists and 2 turnovers. So that's encouraging, but James Harden did not play well against Brooklyn, who had some similar defensive personnel. He was well below a point per possession in both isolation and pick and roll situations, and he shot just 27% on twos. So everything inside of the three-point line, Harden was missing about 3 out of 4 of them, which is pretty bad. He did shoot well from 3 in that series, though, which I think is going to be important. But I think they're going to need a ton out of both Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, especially if Joel Embiid is limited. Tyrese Maxey was excellent in that first round, so that's a good sign. At least offsets some of that stuff with James Harden. And one other note too, as we talk about double teams, particularly of Joel Embiid, Philly was the best spot up shooting team in the league this year. Spot up situations, so attacking closeouts and knocking down threes. So if Joel Embiid does a good job of at least hitting the right guy, they have a good chance to make teams pay for it, and particularly Boston. All right, last matchup I'm going to talk about. Can Philly contain the basketball? I thought all season about this particular matchup. I liked it specifically for Boston, but I was trying to talk myself into Philly because I was impressed by the fight, particularly that Joel Embiid showed. But even James Harden in the game where Tatum hit the game winner, I thought Harden and Embiid showed really good fight to come back from double digits down in that fourth quarter to make that a game. I really liked Philly's matchup against Milwaukee, but unfortunately we're not going to get to see that. So this Boston team is the team they have to get through. As I stared at this series and watched all this film this morning, what eventually made me realize that I don't think that Philly can beat Boston was the perimeter defense dynamic, particularly against Boston's drive and kick. Philly's guards are the weak point of their defense. James Harden, not a good defensive guard. Tyrese Maxey, not a good defensive guard. DeAnthony Melton is good, but it's just one guy, and they're more equipped to handle bigger physical wings than they are to handle guards. So with Boston, you got to remember, Boston has one of the most underrated guard cores in the league. We talk a lot about Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, and Derek White is as good of a backcourt core as you'll find in most teams around the league, especially when you factor in the defensive attention you have to devote towards the Jays. They're getting good matchups. And consistently in this matchup against Philly, they generated fantastic shots. So to give you an idea, Boston generated 17 wide open threes per game against Philly. That's at least 6 feet of separation from the nearest defender. And they shot 51% on them. A big part of that is putting Al Horford at center and pulling Joel Embiid away from the rim and just driving, kicking them to death. Boston in 4 games against Philly this year notched a 119 offensive rating against a top 10 defense in Philly. Philly had a defensive rating of 112.7 during the regular season, 119 versus Boston. To give you some perspective, Sacramento's 118.6 offensive rating was best in the league this year. So Boston scored against this Philly defense at a rate higher than Sacramento did against the rest of the league. So that's a problem. Here's the final piece of evidence I'm going to give before I give my pick. The Celtics group that I expect them to go with most frequently in crunch time is Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, and Derek White. Now, some Celtics fans wish that was a lot more Malcolm Brogdon. I tend to agree, but either way, those are 2 really good guards. I don't think you're losing a ton one way or the other. Sometimes in particular matchups, they'll go big and go with Rob Williams. But the group that I expect them to close with is that group, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, and Derek White. That group played 11 minutes against the Celtics this year and absolutely destroyed them. A 129.2 offensive rating, a 91.7 defensive rating, a plus 37.5 net rating. So I'm picking the Celtics to win this series in 5 games. I think they're the better team on both ends of the floor. I think Philly's one chance to win was an amazing series from Joel Embiid, who I think is the best player in the series, and to get a really great series out of James Harden. And here's the problem. Both of them just aren't playing very well right now. They're not in a good rhythm. And that even goes to a further extent when we factor in Joel Embiid's injury. So in the scenario, you play the series 10 times, maybe Philly wins 2 or 3 of them. In the scenario where they win those 2 or 3, I think Embiid and Harden are in better rhythm and in better health. And they just aren't, and that concerns me. And last but not least, I think the perimeter defense dynamic is going to be a real problem. I think Boston's going to be able to pull Joel Embiid away from the rim and beat guys off the dribble and generate wide open threes. So I just think they're going to get better shots, and that usually is the major swing factor in a series for me. Best chance for Philly, like we talked about, like we saw in those 2 home games against Boston this year, Embiid just has to destroy these guys. And like we talked about, he was almost at 1.5 points per possession in post-ups and ISOs at home. If he plays like that for the whole series and plays in every game, they've got a real chance because nobody on Boston can guard Joel Embiid. But that's the only way. This is the way, so to speak, as speaking in Mandalorian terms. So Joel Embiid's got to be the guy, and I'm just not sure he's in condition to do that. So right now I'm leaning Boston in 5. All right, guys, that's all I have for this afternoon. We'll be back with 2 videos tonight, one after Warriors-Kings Game 6, and then another after Lakers-Grizzlies Game 6. And if the Lakers and Warriors win, then we'll have another series preview tomorrow. We did my wife's birthday party out of town, so we're doing a kind of a celebration on Saturday for all of our friends and family that are in town. So I'm taking Saturday off, so I'll be covering whatever the game is on Saturday. I believe it's Game 1 of Nuggets-Suns. I'll be covering that game on Sunday morning. All right, guys, that's all I have. I will see you guys later tonight.